This is Kaylee Woods, and for my statistic exam presentation, I decided to do the Bechdel test data. So the reason why I chose this data set is actually a little bit strange. I had never heard of the Bechdel test before, so I was kind of curious as to what it was. And when I first opened the Excel spreadsheet, there was this long list of movie names and this remark on whether they had passed or failed this Bechdel test. So when I looked up what the Bechdel test was, I found out that it's actually a method for evaluating the representation of women within like a film or any other kind of media. So instantly this just like piqued my curiosity, and that's why I chose this data set. So the Bechdel test has three criteria that films and other media need to pass in order to pass the whole test. So the first criteria is, are there at least two named women? So this is not just random women. This isn't just an NPC on the sidewalk or anything like that. These are two women that are named that have an impact on the plot of the story itself. And then the second criteria is, do the women have a conversation with each other at some point? So this isn't like a group discussion, or this isn't like them mentioning one another. This is these two women come together and have a one-on-one conversation between the two of them. And then the third and final criteria is, does the conversation not include a male character? So if these two women come together and they have a conversation one on one, but they're talking about another male character in the film, then they fail the Bechdel test. But if they talk about something other than the male character, or something that's not related to the male character, then it is considered a pass. So the question that I had for this is, do films that fail the Bechdel test earn higher gross domestic earnings? So for this set of data, mu1 is all the information of the failed movies and films, and then mu2 is all the ones that are passed. So the statistics that I found was the average gross earnings that failed movies earned was about $74 million. And then this includes 990 movies. And the standard deviation for that was around $83 million. And then the average for the movies that passed the Bechdel test was around $61 million. And this is counting 803 movies with a standard deviation of $75 million. So the hypothesis that I'm testing is obviously, if we look at the null hypothesis, that means that there's no difference between the gross earnings of either of these. But the hypothesis that I'm testing is whether the failed earnings make more than the past earnings. So I calculated this as a right-tailed test. I used the student tease distribution with degrees of freedom at 802, and then also the level of significance of 0.05. So using all this information and obviously assuming that I did my calculations correctly, what I actually found was that the movies that failed the Bechdel test earn higher gross domestic earnings. So another reason why I thought that this was interesting was because this came to question two things in my mind, excuse me. The first question that came to mind was, does this reflect how women are viewed in society? Because oftentimes what I've talked about in classes and talked about just with individual groups and things like that is movies and things that we consume on the media are usually kind of a reflection of what society is thinking or feeling at the time. But at the same time, this leads to my second question. Does this reflect what society thinks about women, or does this simply reflect the different types of films that we consume? Because if you think about it, a lot of action movies, there's not really any need necessarily for women to have a one on one conversation when the goal is to kind of save the world or save some group or society from danger. There's not really any need for that. So it might be obvious that they would fail, whether because the women are not in the movie or because they talk about a man. Regardless, it's not really a big thing. They fail it just because it's an action movie. And then on another genre that this could be related to is like the romance genre, where there may be women present, there may be two women present, but they're talking about the male love interest. And in both of these examples, that doesn't necessarily represent what society thinks about women, but just reflects the different kinds of media that consumed. So I just thought that this was an interesting test and I really enjoyed it. So with that, thank you so much for listening and we'll see you. Hope you have a good summer.